Welcome to the International Center and the University of Michigan EDA Going Global Conversation. This event is a collaborative effort with several organizations, one of which is the University of Michigan Economic Development Association. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Sarah McDonald to come up and talk a little bit about what it is that they do.
Thank you, Phyllis. Grab my cheat sheet right here. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm really excited to listen to what our speakers have to say. I'm with the EDA University Center for Community and Economic Development. We work in a 7-county region known as Michigan's Prosperity Region 6, and we're funded through the Department of Commerce and also supported by the CS Met Foundation and the university. And we work to coordinate, inform, and contribute to economic development efforts, and so we're really excited to learn how global innovation and immigrant populations contribute to that. They play a big role in our whole region. We support this work primarily through applied research with our faculty members. We have one in the audience today, Emily Fearherm, who just was recently awarded a research grant from our center to work on mapping out English as a second language resources, and she's also a part of the board of the ICGF. We also work with local communities to provide technical assistance and also do quite a bit of data collection for the region. And I'd like to point out some of our students here today that have greeted you that are doing a lot of that work. So Hunter DiNiccolo, Radhika Agarwal, Mohammed Al-Aswad, Mohammed Shafiq, Mohammed Badar. You don't have to have the name Mohammed to work with us, but if you guys could wave. They've done a lot of work with us over the last year, and so all that work is migrating over to a new website we'll be releasing to you all soon. And with that, we're thrilled to partner with the ICGF and to highlight the importance of cultural and global diversity, its role in our economic recovery and the quality of life. And really looking forward to hearing from our two inspiring speakers as well. So thank you again.
I'd like to share a little bit about what the ICG stands for, which is the International Center of Greater Flint. To get where we are today, it has been a 3-year journey. And it all began when we noticed the influx of international students that were at our area universities. And so we saw that this was an opportunity to engage with the new population, to leverage the wonderful qualities that they bring to the community. 3 years ago, we met with several stakeholders, myself and Otto, to really ascertain what's the best way to interact with them and to find out if their needs are being met. To help with the transition of course, moving to this community. So we partnered up with several entities and found out that there were gaps in services, but at the same time, tremendous opportunities. So over the course of 3 years, we've met and met over several meetings, and finally, we evolved to who we are now, which is the International Center of Greater Flint. It's been an interesting journey, and so it hasn't been just Otto and myself. I'd like to, at this time, recognize a couple of our board members. And I see Dr. Emily Fearherm and Philip Thompson and Asinda Sirigano. And Stephen Lowe. Is Stephen Lowe here? Okay, and then of course Otto Mohammed, who is the chair of the board as well as one of the co-founders. So we feel that what Flint lacked as a result of the closing of the International Institute was a place, was a space where the international community could connect with the local Flintstones. So we found out that in the transition to living here, there were gaps in being able to access the resources and programs that are available to them. So as a result of the research that we've done, we see the international serving 3-pronged area. One would be information and referral. The other would be multicultural education, engagement, learning. and the other is economic development, international economic development. Some of the things that we've done thus far is you probably have heard about the food festival that we co-sponsored in January, I believe it was. We co-sponsored with the farmers market. And one of the things that was really nice about that is that we had the international community actually prepare the food. So we really had authentic international cuisine. We also co-sponsored with the Links Incorporated, where we acknowledged and paid tribute to women, international women, women of different cultures here for the International Women's Day. The other piece that we have done so far is partnered with one of the elementary schools. We have the international students who go into the 5th and 6th grade classroom, and they share with the students things about their country, their culture, their families, and this has been a phenomenal experience for the 5th and 6th graders. We've partnered with Mott Community College international students as well as the University of Michigan Flint students, and so we are looking to expand this to include Kettering University students as well as other elementary schools in the area. So those are just a few of the things that we have done so far, and we are looking to do more. So I would like to introduce right now the co-founder, Adil Muhammad.
Thank you. Oh, okay. I have it written down because I don't want to miss anything. And I need my glasses too. I just turned 56 last year, so I need my glasses. How's everybody doing? Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and supporting the things that we're doing at ICGF. Secondly, for those who don't know me, I am Adil Muhammad, as Phyllis said, co-founder of ICGF, the lesser half of ICGF. I'm originally from India. I first came to America in 1983. And I've been a resident of Flint and Genesee County since 1988, so 30 years, and that's a long time. But this is home. I currently have one job, which is to support Phyllis and the work she's doing at ICGF. The only other thing that is higher than that is to listen to my wife. So sorry, Phyllis, you're number 2, but you're right up there. And by the way, if you get a chance, wish Phyllis happy birthday. Today is her birthday. Happy birthday, Phyllis. One of the things that we're trying to do here is to be the slogan that ICGF has taken on, and we haven't put it out there yet, but it's easy to convey, which is we celebrate and promote diversity because it strengthens our community. So that's in simple words, that's what we're trying to do at ICGF. It's not just the diversity of the race or the skin color or the faith, it's the diversity of ideas. And that's part of the reason why we have partnered with University Center EDA and the 100K Ideas. So we're talking about trying to celebrate and promote the ideas that each one of us brings, no matter where you come from. So we want to recognize that, and that's part of being a hub. And again, there's another connection point with the Ferris wheel, the Ferris wheel is trying to be a hub for revitalizing and re-energizing the region. And we want to be a part of that. Everybody's trying to do something for Flint. We want to just take the international angle for that. So we hope we can count on your support. Without further delay, let me introduce our first speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Professor Scott Page. Scott Page is a leading thinker, writer, and researcher, and his most recent book, The Diversity Bonus, was published last year. He has written 3 books prior, titled The Difference, Diversity and Complexity in Complex Adaptive Systems. Currently, he's the Leonid Hurwitz Collegiate Professor of Complex Systems, Political Science, and Economics at the University of Michigan. He also directs the Center for the Study of Complex Systems at Ann Arbor. In 2011, he was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. This is an academy that members get elected. You can't just join, they have to be elected. So he joins a very august group of members in that society. He has published several papers in a variety of disciplines, including economics, political science, computer science, management, physics, public health, geography, urban planning, engineering, and history. So as you can tell, complex systems. He has a BA from University of Michigan and an MA from the University of Wisconsin, both in mathematics. He obtained his PhD in managerial economics and decision sciences from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University. He taught at Caltech, UCLA, and the University of Iowa prior to returning to Ann Arbor. He is an external faculty member at the Santa Fe Institute, which is ranked 20th among the world's top science and technology think tanks. He has also been the recipient of a MacArthur Foundation Initiative on Inequality and Poverty Research Grant and a Guggenheim Fellowship. He's a highly sought-after speaker at national and international organizations, NGOs, governmental entities, businesses, conferences, and community initiatives. He has been a featured speaker at Davos, Bloomberg, Google, Boeing, and NASA. I welcome him to Flint and thank him for presenting his work and insights to us this evening. Dr. Scott Page.
Great, it's great to be here. What he didn't mention is I'm from a place called Yankee Springs, Michigan, which is just north of Kalamazoo, south of Grand Rapids, so kind of a place without a stoplight. So Flint still remains a big city to me, even though I've been to the place. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Dylan Phillips came down and we spent a couple hours in Ann Arbor a couple weeks ago, and they're talking about what they're doing. And what's amazing to me is someone who studies complex systems thinking basically argues that the way you improve things, the way you make things better, is from the bottom up, not from the top down. It's from individual people changing their behaviors, changing lives, and improving the world we live in. And so this is exactly the sort of thing that needs to be done, not only in Flint, but everywhere. And it is really an honor to be here. What I want to do today, just very quickly, is talk about some of my own work in this space to just maybe give you a little bit of frame of why I think this is so important. So, let's try it this way. There we go. So what I want to do is I want to talk about why is it that people talk so much about diversity, right? There's a lot of, within the government, within private organizations, there's a lot of talk about diversity. And the thing is, the standard logic sort of go as follows. First is that it's just normatively the right thing to do. We live in an unequal society, and it's the right thing to set up a more diverse world. Second thing is that there's a demographic imperative, right? The United States will be majority-minority by 2050, big influx of international students, international people, and so it's just going to have to be the case that we have to make our workplaces and our communities more integrated, and organizations like this are really going to matter. In addition, there's sort of a combination of these two, that there's so much lost opportunity because of inequality and the demographics. So there's a recent report by the Kellogg Foundation coming out of Battle Creek that said that by 2050, if we don't improve inequality, that we'll lose $2 trillion in economic development, right? That's a large number. There's a T there, not an M or a B, but a T, right? But I want to make a different argument. The argument I want to make is that hanging out with diverse people, the diverse interactions actually give us better outcomes. Okay, so and the argument's going to be this. I'm a professor of complex systems. The diversity actually makes us better on complex tasks. So not on all tasks, but on complex tasks. So let me step back and think about early Flint, right? Early Flint, this was really kind of a logging town, right? Flint and Saginaw, where all the trees came down. And when you hired people at a logging camp, what they would do is they would count how many trees you could chop down. So the big dude can chop down 12, the smaller guy who's also smoking a pipe, maybe only 8, right? And the way you hired people was just based on ability. In fact, they did one other thing. They also counted your teeth, because you had to be able to eat enough meat the next day to be able to sort of continue to chop down the trees. Now, in this sort of world, The only place that diversity and inclusion sort of come in is that you don't want to discriminate, right? So if a woman showed up and she could chop down 13 trees, you should hire her. They wouldn't have, right? But they shouldn't. And this is what we call, in economics, sort of an additive space. If I want to know how many trees these 5 guys can chop down, I just sum it up. 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 8 plus 12, and I get 50. Diversity isn't doing anything magic here. Nothing exciting is happening. This is the world we live in now. So I was involved in this project for something called the Foresight Group out of England, where they said, let's just map out the causes of obesity. We're like, no problem, there it is. You're kidding me, right? This is super complicated, and if you unpack it, there's media, there's social, there's psychological, everything from giant cokes to lack of sidewalks to bacteria in your gut to giant Happy Meals. It's all in that graph, right? So there's no one person that's going to understand this. If we want to solve the obesity epidemic in the United States, we need lots of people from different places, learning in different disciplines, different knowledge bases, all that sort of stuff. So in this sort of world, diversity matters. Today, I spent the day on the phone in a conference, nice thing about technology, with the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and one of the graphs that 3 of us put up was this one. This is the situation in Afghanistan. Again, a little bit harder than chopping down trees. And there's no one person that can understand coalition support, government capacity, popular support, infrastructure, insurgents, the drug trade, outside drug trade, the oil industry, right? No way. You need teams of diverse people, teams of experts with diverse understandings from all around the globe to solve this sort of problem. So one of the reasons I want to talk about, so why is it, how is it that diversity works? And I want to start by giving the wrong analogy. People say, oh, we want a diverse community, we want diverse interactions, kind of for the same reason we want a diverse portfolio. Well, with a diverse portfolio, right, I get the average. If one stock pays 8, one pays 12, one pays 4, one pays -8, I get 5. That's the average of those stocks. Diversity, when we talk about diversity of people, we don't get the average, we get better than the average. We get a lot better than the average. And so my recent book is called The Diversity Bonus, not because this is marketing, because this is kind of like a mathematical fact. So let me show you, now we'll slow down a bit, why this is true. Suppose we're predicting something, we're forecasting something. What's the population of Flint going to be in 20 years? Will this new idea that somebody has in this incubator going to work, right? So we get a bunch of people together. So here's a famous example of forecasting by Francis Galton. So in 1806, 787 people at this West of England fat stock and poultry exhibition. They all guessed the weight of a steer. The average guess is 197 pounds, right? So I teach at the University of Michigan. When I go out of state, people say, which school has the ag school? Is it Michigan or Michigan State? And I'll say, well, this is a graph of a steer from someone at the University of Michigan. Michigan State has the ag school. The steer has an udder, right? So we may be good at statistics, but we kind of suck at ag, it appears. Okay, so pretend it's a steer. The average guess was 1197. The steer weighed 1198. So there's this thing, it's like, how could it be? How can the crowd be so wise? What makes a wise crowd? We can prove something called the diversity prediction theorem, and this is in one of the books called The Difference, that if a group of people are predicting, the error of the crowd doesn't equal the average error of the people in it, like a portfolio. It's actually smaller, and the amount by which it's smaller depends on the diversity. Now, these aren't just kind of buzzwords. This is like really actually ugly kind of math. So we're not going to do it, right? But it's like a mathematical fact. So if you look at Galton's steer, the data from that, the crowd was off by a pound. In statistics, we square errors. So it was 1.4 pounds. So when you squared it, it's 2. And on average, people were off by about 70 pounds, right? 70 squared is 4,900. So why is it that the crowd's getting it right? Well, some people are too high, some people are too low. But when the errors kind of cancel out, it makes the crowd a lot more accurate. Steers aren't that important, right? But hiring people is. So I spent a lot of time at Google thinking about this stuff, because Google cares about, they solve hard problems, right? So how do you get the right diverse teams? And they have this opposite problem that Flint has. They get 3.5 million job applicants per year. That's freaking amazing, right? So they basically just throw the resumes down the stairs. No, they don't. Right? They interview people and they found 2 things. First thing they found is you want teams of people interviewing, and this is sort of how good the employee is as a function of the number of interviewers. Well, this is the same thing. It's not like the later interviewers are smarter. It's just they're having different sets of eyeballs look at a person. You make better and better and better decisions. Here's some even more amazing data. This is 40 years of forecasts by 20,000 forecasts by professional economists. So these are in the European Union and in the United States. Every quarter they predict things like unemployment, inflation, that sort of stuff, right? And these are all the big boys and girls making their predictions. The crowd is 21% better than the average person. Okay? Why? Because the crowd is diverse. And here's what's really sort of amazing. Here's an average economist, give them an error of 1. If you just average 2 economists, you do 9% better. Okay? But let's go back and think about this. Here's the portfolio of stocks. You get the average. Here's the 4 best economists. The first one's 10% better, the second one's 9% better, the third one's 9% better, the fourth one's 9% better. If you average them, you get 22% better. Why? Because there's a bonus from thinking differently. Now think about this for just a second. In your retirement funds, you put it in a diverse portfolio to spread risk. If you were getting a bonus of this large, your portfolio would be way more diverse than it is now. Right? Rod is nodding his head back there, right? Oh my gosh, you've got as much diversity as you can get because there's this giant bonus lurking out there. So again, this isn't some cute experiment with 20 undergraduates in a lab. This is just a mathematical fact that the bonus is there. The magnitude, right, is going to depend on the context, but in this context of investing, the magnitude is enormous. Let's look at another task that's particularly relevant to Flint, right? We get this 1,000K ideas thing, right? Creativity. How do we measure creativity? So the way psychologists measure creativity is they have something called the alternative uses test. We give you some idea like, what are we going to do with this vacant lot? What are we going to do with a brick? This is something called the brick test, if you look it up on the web. And by the way, the weirdest answer ever on the brick test is, you could use it as a Barbie coffin. Let it go, let it go. That just gives you a sense of like the range of ideas people think of. So I was at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, and I said, okay, there's this new thing, blockchain technology that, people use for these sort of like, weird kinds of money. Is there something, other uses other than cryptocurrency that you might use it for? And here's some ideas people had at the Fed, right? Somebody's saying, use it for hospital data, legal things, keep track of art, scientific stuff. When you think of it, what's the creativity of a group of people? What's the creativity of the group of people in Flint? It's not, you don't sort of just take the most ideas that one person had. You take the union of all these ideas, and again, there's this bonus, right? Okay, and if you hired all people that were like the person who had the most ideas, there would be no bonus, right? So you don't want to necessarily hire people who are cookie cutters. You want people who are different. Okay, and that's the sort of motivation of things like behind the 100K ideas. So very quickly then, one of the things that ICGF is trying to do is say, look, it's very important. We've got people coming from all over the world to Flint. Why do we care about identity diversity, right? In terms of making us better at solving these problems. Well, this is, in my book, is co-written with this woman named Catherine Phillips, and she basically gives sort of 4 reasons. She says, look, if you look at decades of research, what you find is that socially diverse groups are more innovative than homogeneous groups. Why? Well, one thing is you can say, look, identity diversity maps to cognitive diversity, maps to these sort of better outcomes, okay? And what do we mean by identity diversity? We mean stuff like gender, race, age, sexual orientation, ethnicity, social class, neighborhood, religion. These are differences kind of on the outside of us. Those translate into differences in information, knowledge, models, ways of thinking that give us better outcomes, okay? So that's sort of the direct argument. But then the other thing Catherine says, which is really sort of fascinating, there's also group effects. When you're in a room with people different than you, you just think differently. So next time you're in a room with someone who's blind, realize how differently you're talking about things, saying things, thinking about the world. Next time you're in a room with someone from a different country than you are, think about how differently you're thinking about the world, right? So again, there's strong evidence of group effects. Third thing is there's just incredibly strong identity effects. Who we are affects what we study, right? So I was speaking to a bunch of medical college deans last week, the AAMC, this is their association, and they asked people, are you planning on serving an underserved community, right? And notice how Black and Latino doctors were much more likely than white and Asian doctors to say, I want to go back and serve these communities. And this is, again, who you are affects what you do. So as the poet Mary Oliver likes to say, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life, right? And so part of, some of these people ask me, like, why are you doing this stuff? And the reason I'm doing this stuff is, I'm from like Yankee Springs, Michigan, where there was not a lot going on, right? And I get this amazing opportunity to go to the University of Michigan and be taught a lot of stuff. And so the idea is like to go back, right, and try and help as opposed to sort of feathering your own nest. So what you do with your wild and precious life is going to be a function of where you're from. So the data is sort of overwhelming. If you look at sort of all the science being done in the world. Teams are more innovative. The more diversity you got, the better you do, unless you get too much and you can't control the team. Big surprise, women are more collaborative than men. Shocking. And then if something becomes more complex, and Rod will probably talk about this as well, you need to be more coordinated. So let me just show you, this is an amazing study, because this study covers 24 million papers. So it's every paper ever published. And one of the things you find is that papers written by teams are better. Here's the bonus from having more people. Here's the bonus from having people who are smart, because they've published lots of papers in the past. Here's the bonus of having those people be diverse. This big bonus comes from if you have smart people who are diverse, you get this bonus, plus this bonus, plus this bonus. This is what we call an interaction term in social science. So what we get is you need people who are intellectually engaged, who have expertise, who are different. Now that isn't one little study of 30 people, right? That isn't a case that someone's teaching at Harvard Business School. This is every freaking piece of research ever published in human history. Those are the size of the bonuses, right? So this is just an on-the-ground fact. Okay, so what do we do, and why is something like this so important? Well, if you look at immigrants, they're 200% more likely to start a new business, right? If you look 51%, so in Silicon Valley, they have what they call unicorns, right? These are startups that make $1 billion, are worth a market cap of $1 million. Half of them have immigrant founders, 71% have immigrants in key positions. Right? Is it because the immigrants are smarter? No, it's because you've got this influx of difference, right, that's creating these sort of bonuses. If you look at the management teams, again, it's 70%. So if you look at this as Kettering's incoming class of international students, this is an incredible resource for Flint. So when people say, what does Flint have going for it? A lot of things. It's got its people that are currently here, and it's also got new people coming in, bringing in new ideas, which is what this organization is trying to take advantage of. So very quickly then, what do we do, right? So Maxine Hong Kingston, who's a poet and writer I learned about when I was an undergrad at Michigan, talks about like you've got to carry your values out into the world, right? You've got to think about what are your values, and you've got to carry those out in the world to make it better. And so we've got to seek out diversity. So you've got to avoid what we call the siren call of sameness. Like, wow, I'm smart, you look like me, you're smart, right? You've got to sort of move beyond that, right? And you've got to find people who have a purpose. Right, so this is a friend of mine, Victor Garcia, who's a doctor at Cincinnati Children's, and he would feel really good about himself when someone come in with a knife wound or a gunshot would like just put a little check on his wall, like saved another life. And then one day he realized, you know what? I'm at the end of the supply chain. There's some process that's producing these people. There's somebody that, there's some reason this kid got knifed. I'm going to go home with this kid. Every kid that gets shot or knifed in my hospital, I'm going to go home with that kid and find out what caused him to be here and fix this problem at the beginning as opposed to fix this problem at the end. And that's because Victor has a purpose as opposed to just sort of being a doctor. So when I think about inclusion, I'll just sort of end with this. The famous graduation speech by David Foster Wallace, where there's two fish swimming and this older fish comes up and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" They kind of look at him quizzically, he swims off, and then they're like, "What the hell is water?" Right? Again, Rod's kind of shaking his head back. Like, one of the things you got to think about is like, what is it like to be here? So when someone comes into Flint from another culture, they're very aware of what the water is, even if you're not. And understanding what that water is and making that water someplace that everybody wants to swim in is really important. So you need to bring this diversity together on complex tasks, not on chopping wood. And the way to do this, there's a wonderful book out by Kim Scott, where she talks about radical candor, is you think about people are here for a reason. Right? And to create these sort of diversity bonuses, to have diverse groups of people work well, two things have to happen. First is you have to care about people personally. And that's why organizations like this are so important. People have to feel like, we want you here in Flint, right? We want you here because together we're going to make this a better place. But it's also the case that you have to challenge those ideas. So I'm a big fan of 2x2 box things, right? So if you challenge people but you don't care about them, you're in what we call an obnoxious aggression box. Just think New York City or something, right? If you care about people a lot, but you're not actually challenging their ideas, you're just, oh, it's so nice to have you here, but I'm not engaging you in any way, you're in the ruinous empathy box, right? And to be honest, at the University of Michigan, where I teach in Ann Arbor, sometimes we fall into that box, right? We're so concerned about being inclusive that we're not actually engaging people's ideas. Where you want to be is in this radical candor box. You want Flint to be a place where there's 100K ideas thrown out there, and then you find the 274 that are going to work, right? And then you work together to make those ideas work, to make a better Flint. All right, thank you very, very much.